The sky was gray and the wind carried a soft chill across the empty field. The graveyard stretched for miles, filled with rows of white stones that had long lost their shine. Once this place had been the heart of the city. People came here to honor the heroes who gave everything to protect humanity. But now, years later, almost no one came. The wars were over. The world had moved on. Ella Lawson walked slowly through the wet grass. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of storm and earth. Her black boots made soft sounds with every step. She carried a small bunch of wildflowers in her hand, white and blue flowers she had picked from the forest nearby. They were simple, not special, but they were real. That mattered to her more than anything. She stopped in front of a grave. The stone was old. Cracks ran through the name carved into it. Moss grew at the edges, and rainwater had washed away some of the letters. But Ella didn't need to read it. She knew the name by heart. Captain Eric Hawke, hero of the final war. He fell so others could rise. The world remembered him as a legend. Ella remembered him as a story told by her grandmother. She had never met him. She was born long after the war. But Eric was the kind of man who made people believe in hope, even if they had never seen him. She knelt on the cold, wet ground. Her knees sank a little into the soft mud. She placed the flowers at the base of the stone and traced the name with her fingers. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice was soft, but it echoed in the still air. "I'm sorry I didn't save you." She felt foolish saying it. She hadn't even been alive when Arik died. But every time she heard stories of the war, she felt a strange kind of guilt. Maybe because no one had saved him. Maybe because the world just let him fade away, like an old photograph in the rain. Ella closed her eyes. The rain started again, but only lightly, tiny drops tapping her face like a gentle reminder. "You were everything," she whispered again. "You gave everything, and we forgot." For a moment, everything was quiet. The wind blew softly through the graveyard. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called. The city beyond the walls of the graveyard was full of light, noise, and technology. Giant skyships floated through the clouds. Drones zipped between tall glass towers. Humanity had grown stronger, richer, faster. But the heroes who made that possible were buried here, silent, forgotten. Ella wiped the rain from her face. She didn't notice that it wasn't just the rain. Her eyes were wet too. Years ago, during the Great Arkoth War, Earth had almost fallen. The Arkoth were not like any enemy humanity had faced before. They were taller, stronger, and had minds that could control machines. Their ships had covered the skies like black wings. Every city had become a battlefield. Humanity was not ready. But then came Arik Hawke, a young captain, brave and stubborn, who refused to give up. He led the final counterattack, a desperate mission to destroy the Arkoth's core base. He had no reason to believe he would survive. He went anyway, and when the dust settled, the Arkoth were gone. Humanity had won. But Arik never returned. The government called him a martyr. Statues were built. Songs were sung. But over time, the statues were removed. The songs were forgotten. People cared more about their bright, perfect future than the blood and courage that built it. Only a few people like Ella remembered. Only a few visited the graveyard anymore. A sudden sound broke the silence. A soft, low hum. Ella opened her eyes and turned slightly, frowning. It was faint, like a vibration through the ground. She looked around. No one else was there. The graveyard was empty, as it always was. She shook her head. "Probably a skyship," she whispered to herself. The city's flight lanes passed overhead sometimes, and the sound often echoed in strange ways. But the sound didn't fade. It grew closer, and with it came something else, a faint warmth in the air. Ella shivered. The air had been cold a moment ago. Now it felt like someone had lit a small fire behind her. She slowly stood up, brushing mud from her hands. Her heart began to beat a little faster. She told herself it was nothing. Just her mind playing tricks, but then she heard it. Footsteps, soft, slow, heavy, not the sound of a drone, not the wind. Footsteps of someone real. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. No one came here at night. No one cared about the old graves. Her mind raced. She thought about leaving. But something in the sound of those steps made her stay. They were steady, familiar, like the footsteps of someone who belonged here. She turned around. The graveyard path was covered in fog. It rolled across the ground like a soft white blanket. A figure appeared at the far end of the path, walking through it, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing something dark and heavy. Ella's heartbeat drummed in her ears. She squinted, trying to make out the face. But the fog was too thick. The figure kept walking closer, slow and steady. The sound of boots on wet stone grew louder. "Hello," Ella said, her voice shaking slightly. "Who's there?" No answer. "Just footsteps." Ella took a small step back, her heel touching the base of Aric's gravestone. She thought about running, but something inside her whispered, "Wait!" The figure stopped just a few meters away. The fog shifted a little, revealing more. A man. His clothes were dark, but not like anything she'd seen in the city. Heavy armor, scratched and burned as if it had survived a war. A dark cloak draped over his shoulders. His hair was wet and dark. His jaw was strong, but it was his eyes that caught her breath. Clear, sharp blue. He looked like someone out of a history book. Someone who belonged to another time. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ella swallowed. "This is private," she said softly, not sure why she was saying it. "You shouldn't be here." The man tilted his head slightly. His voice, when it came, was deep and calm. "I've been here before." The words hit her like a cold wind. She didn't know why they scared her. But they did. What? She whispered. His gaze moved past her to the grave behind her. Her heart skipped a beat. No one should have known whose grave this was. The city barely remembered anymore, but he did. He walked forward, slow and quiet, until he was close enough that she could see the faint lines on his face. He stopped in front of the grave. Rain fell softly around them, tapping on the stone, dripping from his cloak. Ella wanted to speak, but no words came out. The man lowered his head slightly. "They still come," he said. "Even after all this time." She shook her head slowly. "No one comes here. Just me." His eyes finally met hers again. Something in them made her breath catch, a mix of strength and sadness, of someone who had carried too much for too long. "You came," he said quietly. "That's enough." Ella stared at him. Her mind was spinning. Who was this man? How did he know about Aric's grave? Why did he look like someone who had walked out of the war itself? Then her eyes dropped to the emblem on his chest plate. It was faded, scratched, but she recognized it. A hawk with spread wings. Her grandmother had told her about that symbol. It was the personal mark of one man, one hero, one name. Her voice was a whisper, almost too quiet to hear. Aric?" The man didn't answer right away, but the look in his eyes told her everything. The hero whose grave she knelt before was standing behind her. Alive. The rain fell harder now, but Ella didn't feel the cold anymore. She stood there, heart pounding, as the impossible became real before her eyes. The legend was alive, and nothing in her world would ever be the same again. The rain fell in steady drops, cold and soft, but Ella hardly noticed it anymore. She could not take her eyes off him. The man standing in front of her was supposed to be gone. The world had buried him long ago. Yet here he was, real, breathing, and looking at her with calm eyes, Aric Hawk. The name felt too big for the moment. He was more than a legend. He was flesh and blood. Ella's heart pounded so loudly that she thought he could hear it. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to speak. You can't be real. You died. Everyone said you died." Aric didn't move for a few seconds. Then slowly he lowered the hood of his cloak. His hair was dark, longer than in the old photos she had seen. There were faint scars on his face. But it was him, the same sharp jawline, the same blue eyes. "I was supposed to be dead," he said softly. "But death had other plans." Ella stared at him. "But how? Where were you?" Aric looked around the graveyard as if searching for words. "The world was told I fell in the last battle. That was not true. When the Arkoth base exploded, I was pulled through one of their transport gates. I was taken far from here. I was kept alive, trapped for years." His voice was calm, but there was a shadow behind it. A weight. Ella took a small step closer. "Trapped? Why would they keep you alive?" "They wanted a symbol," Aric said. "Someone to break, someone to use. I was a face the people trusted. If they could control me, they could control fear. But they failed. I escaped." For a moment, the only sound was the rain hitting the stone graves. Ella could not fully understand the kind of pain hidden behind his calm tone, but she could feel it. "Why didn't you come back earlier?" she asked. Arik let out a slow breath. When I escaped, Earth wasn't the same. Time had passed. People forgot. The world built a new life without me. I had nothing, no one to return to. But now you're here, Ella whispered. Yes, Arik said. His gaze turned toward the city beyond the graveyard walls. The tall glass towers glowed in the night, clean and bright. I came back because something is wrong. Ella frowned. Wrong? He turned back to her. The Arkoth may have lost the war, but they did not disappear. They went underground, quiet, patient, waiting. I have seen their work. They are building something. And this city is their next target. A shiver ran down Ella's spine. For years, everyone believed the Arkoth were gone forever. Their defeat had been the beginning of a new age of peace. People stopped talking about war. They built faster, brighter, higher. They never looked back. No one will believe you, Ella said quietly. People don't even talk about the Arkoth anymore. Arik gave a small, knowing smile. I know. That's why they're winning without a fight. His words hung in the air like a cold wind. Ella felt the weight of them settle in her chest. What do you need me for? She asked after a moment. I'm not a soldier. I'm just me. You remembered, Arik said simply. When everyone else forgot, you remembered. You came here. That means more than you think. I only brought flowers, she said. He stepped closer, not threateningly, but with quiet strength. You brought memory, and memory is what they fear. The Arkoth want a world that forgets its heroes, a world that will not resist. Ella didn't know what to say. A part of her wanted to run. Another part of her wanted to stay and listen to every word he said. What do we do? She asked finally. Arik's expression grew serious. We start by showing the truth. There is a hidden Arkoth base beneath the lower city. They built it in the ruins after the war. It's small now, but it's growing. If they are not stopped, they will rise again. Ella's head spun. She had never been part of anything like this. She worked in a quiet archive, collecting stories of the past. She had no weapons, no armor, no training. But looking at Arik, she saw something that she hadn't seen in anyone else in this world. A purpose. Why me? She asked again, her voice soft. Because you still believe, he said, and because I can't do this alone. That night they walked together through the quiet streets of Eldoria. The city was beautiful in a way that made it hard to believe danger was near. Lights floated in the air like tiny stars. Skyships glided silently between towers. People moved quickly, busy with their own lives, unaware of what was coming. Arik wore a long coat over his old armor. It made him blend in just enough not to draw attention. Ella followed him closely, her heart still unsure but her steps firm. Everything looked so different, Arik said, his eyes scanning the city. When I left, this was rubble. You were gone a long time, Ella replied. Yes, he said. Too long. They reached a small old building near the lower end of the city. It was abandoned. Dust covered the broken windows. A faint blue light pulsed beneath the door. Ella hesitated. This place. What is it? One of their doors, Arik said. Hidden beneath the city. People think it's just an old power station. But it's more. Inside, the air smelled of metal and cold. The walls were covered in strange cables and symbols that didn't belong to Earth. Ella followed Arik carefully. He moved like someone who had been here before. He stopped in front of a large metal door with glowing lines across it. Beyond this, he said, is proof. And danger. Ella's hands shook a little, but she nodded. I trust you. He gave her a quick look, not of command, but of quiet respect. Then he placed his hand on a panel near the door. The glowing lines shifted, then faded. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a vast underground chamber. The ceiling curved like the inside of a ship. Strange machines lined the walls, and at the center stood a tall black structure pulsing with light. It's a beacon, Arik said. They're calling their fleet. Ella stared, wide-eyed. But how long? Soon, Arik answered. Too soon. She walked slowly toward the beacon, careful not to touch anything. The lights on its surface seemed to move like water, alive and watching. She felt small standing next to it. They built this right under the city, she whispered. Yes, Arik said, and no one noticed. Why didn't they attack already? She asked. Arik's eyes narrowed. Because they don't need to. If they control the city from inside, they won't have to fire a single shot. A loud sound echoed from deeper in the chamber. A hum. The beacon's light grew brighter. They know we're here, Arik said quickly. His voice remained calm, but his movements were sharp. Ella's heart raced. What do we do? He turned to her. You said you worked in archives. Do you still have access to the city records? Yes. Then you can help me warn them, he said. Not with weapons. With truth, she frowned. No one will believe us. They will, Arik said firmly. If they see what's coming. They left the base before the hum grew louder. Outside, the city still looked peaceful. No one knew what was beneath their feet. They walked in silence for a while. The night air was cool and smelled faintly of rain. Ella finally spoke. I don't know if I'm ready for this. No one ever is, Arik said. I wasn't either. But courage isn't being ready. It's standing up when the world is about to fall. She looked at him, really looked. For all his strength, there was something deeply human in his eyes. Not the perfect hero from the stories. A man who had lost everything but still stood up. Something inside her shifted. The fear was still there, but now it was standing next to something else, a quiet flame. I'll help you, she said. Arik gave a small nod. Then we start tonight. Days passed quickly after that. Ella worked in secret, digging into old city systems that no one cared about anymore. Arik moved through the shadows, finding places where the Arkoth had left traces. Slowly, a map began to form, a network of hidden tunnels and signals. Every night they met at the graveyard, the place where it all began. It became their quiet ground, their promise. You know, Ella said one night, looking at his gravestone. It's strange to talk to someone who's supposed to be dead. Arik gave a soft laugh, the first she had heard from him. I guess I never liked following rules, she smiled. Good, but they both knew what was coming. The beacon under the city was not silent anymore. Each day its signal grew stronger, and one day soon, the Arkoth would return, but this time they would not face an unprepared world. This time there would be resistance. Arik had returned not to be remembered but to fight again. And Ella, the girl who once knelt at his grave, had become the first to stand with him. As the sun rose over Eldoria, its light touching the tall towers and quiet streets, two figures stood at the edge of the graveyard. A hero from the past and a girl from the present, and for the first time in a long time the world had hope again.